to ELI Presents Pass the Mic, a podcast by the Foundation of the Alliance for Community Media. The Foundation works to advance community media through educational programs, research, and by raising the visibility of our field nationwide. Pass the Mic is hosted by Emerging Leaders Institute alumni and features conversations with the people who helped build community media and the leaders shaping where it's headed next. I'm Charlotte Lynch, the station manager at Westwood Media Center in Westwood, Massachusetts. I participated in ELI in 2024, and I've been involved in community media since about 2014. I'm joined today by Audrey Duncan, the Director of Community Affairs at BronxNet. Audrey has been involved with BronxNet since 1993, which is actually 1 year older, 1 year younger than I am. So you've been doing this for a very long time. Over the years, Audrey has overseen development and training activities, developed financial supports, and created and implemented marketing. In her role as Director of Community Affairs, she oversees partnerships and activities that will sustain her organization. Audrey also serves as a member of the National Board for the Alliance for Community Media. Audrey, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thank you so much for inviting me to this great platform.
Yeah, we're excited to get started, and we're excited to get to know you a little bit more in terms of your role in community media. So we're going to dive right in with the first question, which is kind of your origin story within it. How did you get started in our field?
So I was working for an environmental organization, doing just a wide range of things, administrative assistance, some fundraising, and some communications work. And it was focused, well, obviously on things like paper recycling and green markets and so on. And they wanted a public service announcement to be produced. So together with another one of the managers there, we decided we didn't want a straight talking head like the organization was used to producing. So we said we wanted to do something really creative. So we did a script and got actors, and that really, sparked something in me. I said, wow, I think I might want to do more of this. So I didn't go straight to television, but I went to another nonprofit organization that was focused on food and hunger. And there I was responsible for producing several like public service announcements and other media content. So I really dived in and again took the creative route when asked to do those projects. And then finally, after I think it was a couple of years, I said, you know what, I'm ready. I said, whatever salary at the time, may not be much now, but to me it was something then. I said, wow, I'm willing to give up this salary to make a transition into television. So I called someone at one of the cable companies. They had a community programming department. And I said, I would love to work there. You sent my reel and spoke to them. I said, I'm willing to work for intern pay. So after about a month, they got back to me and said, hey, we'd love to have you. So that's how I got into what was community media in a different way. There was the public access part of that cable operation was right across the hall, and we were considered to be the community programming office. So we produced content for organizations and about Upper Manhattan and Harlem and so on. And then after a while, that cable company was taken over by Time Warner, and they were going to get rid of the community programming as well as the public access department. And so eventually, I was looking at in the paper and saw an ad that BronxNet was being formed, and they were looking for several positions. So I applied for a couple, for news director and for training director, and got the training director position. That was in 1993.
Excellent. Pretty storied history, which is kind of like starting out with PSAs and then doing more PSAs and then doing more television work and then finally coming into here. So in terms of where you started back in 1993 with BronxNet to today, what kind of has that transition looked like from the responsibilities that you did have all the way up to what you're facing on a day-to-day in 2026?
Sure. I guess it was, great to be able to go through several different positions and to really know the organization inside out. I started by building a public training program for the organization because, again, as I said, it was a new organization. They had been around for 1 year and, maybe a couple of years before that on paper, but they started building by hiring interns from the college where the organization was based, primarily from Lehman College, which is part of the City University of New York. And at the time, the then executive director had a strong interest in news. So he was focused a lot on producing a show, a daily news show, actually. So I was doing both. I was building the training program for the public and participating in doing stories for the news show. And then eventually, when the training program was, finalized, focused more on that and just getting Lehman College professors trained, members of the public trained, and over the years, up until just I guess during the pandemic, we would train an average of like 200 people per year to produce their own independent content so they could become public access producers. At the same time, somewhere a few years prior, they decided they wanted to, BronxNet decided we wanted to, raise some extra funds from foundations and such. So they asked me to help. So I did that um, as well as doing, a lot of the communications for the organization, um, press releases and such. You know, and today, during the pandemic, I became director of community affairs because we realized it was such a strong need, with the pandemic and just with everything, all the changes that were going on in society, to have just a stronger connection with the community and to build stronger partnerships with the organizations that serve the borough, building strong partnerships with our elected officials and so on. And it's great to connect all of those roles into just helping BronxNet move forward.
200 people. That is a year. That is very impressive. We're from a much smaller community and we don't nearly have that many people involved. So that must be a lot of work to manage all of that. And I'm just wondering what like that workload was for you. Like, how did that feel interacting so much with so many different people in the community?
It was actually kind of wonderful because at the time, we still have a lot of people coming in now, but before the pandemic, there were even more people coming into the studios, and just, of course, not just running the program and hiring the instructors and so on, but just chit-chatting with them when they came in and just finding out about their vision and what they wanted to do, why they were doing what they were doing in terms of creating content without compensation. They were really committed, and that was really wonderful. We also actually years back, and we did it for like 20 years, did an award show to honor them. So they would enter the way you enter the Emmys, and it was just great seeing them light up when they received their awards and their nominations.
Yeah. My next question you kind of already touched on was going to be, what are some of the unique ways that your work at BronxNet has kind of, influenced the community either in the Bronx or kind of outside of it? And you have touched on that a little bit, but I'm wondering if you can hone in on maybe like a program or a project. You just mentioned the awards program. Like, what's something that you look back on and you're like particularly proud of that you see not only serves the community, but also BronxNet, kind of like in a collaborative effort there?
I guess anything that I've done to contribute to enabling people to realize their vision, whether it's the producers, working a bit with, we have a strong internship workforce development program. Anything I did to contribute to that and helping young college and high school students um, learn hands-on how to create media and from there go on to just unimaginable positions in the mainstream media industry. And then working with organizations who have been so grateful for having the opportunity to tell their story on BronxNet has been wonderful. Um, Helping health organizations recently, like meeting someone in the community, let's say at a hospital, and telling them about BronxNet. And within a couple of months, they were doing a show on BronxNet to, just give people health information that was very valuable
That's wonderful.
to the community.
Yeah, that's great. I always love how in community media you kind of get a little bit of a feel for everything just because there's so many varied roles. You get to learn camera, you get to learn audio, lighting, producing, all of these different things. And, as I've certainly explored the community around us, and I was serving with another community media station before I was with Westwood. I did notice that many people don't exactly know a lot about what we do, about what we offer. And it sounds like it might be a little bit different for you, but I'm wondering if you have anything that you can identify as like a unsung thing that we provide to the community that if you were to go to someone on the street and try to introduce them to and say, hey, here's a really cool thing we do, here's the hook, what do you think is something that you would love to identify that is very unique in the way that community media can offer that something like traditional media might not be able to?
I'm gonna, I guess, say everything, but I'm gonna, I guess, hone in on the workforce development aspect of everything. While we we know about it, we're proud, and obviously the participants know, and our elected officials have been supportive. And you know, I don't know if a lot of people know that a community media organization is a great place to learn the skills you need to build a career in media. And now media is so broad that, obviously, people have gone on to broadcast operations, cable outlets. But now, even if you want to be an independent communicator online, this is still a great place to really learn how to do it in a very professional way. So I think that is a great unsung secret. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I went to college, because I've been so involved with community media going into it, I had so many of those skill sets. And so for the first like 2 years of college, not to brag or anything, but it was like I already had that leg up. And I don't think a lot of people necessarily know just how valuable those kinds of things are, because that is kind of at the heart of community media, is a little bit of that education piece, a little bit of getting people to want to come back, not only because it helps us with programming and whatnot, but because it's a genuine teaching kind of experience to show people exactly what they can do with media. And as you alluded to, media has changed so much. There's so many people who can just pull out an iPhone, buy a microphone off of Amazon, and run a podcast or do interviews for sports teams and whatnot. So I still really see the value in community media in that aspect, because we are an industry that is very well equipped to adapt to those types of things. And I think that that's a wonderful thing that we can continue to offer to people.
Absolutely. And I've noticed over the years that people they sort of mimic what they see. So that, people love to play with media, like you said, their phone, which is wonderful, for your leisure time. But I think when they come to a community media station, they realize, oh, I can do something even more impactful with these skills, whether they're building a career or not. They realize I can really communicate with my public, and just get across the message that I want to get across. So they really take things a bit more seriously once they see what community media has to offer.
Especially once you're running like, a high-end camera and everything, people start to pay a
Absolutely.
little bit more attention to the
Yes,
the finer
definitely.
details of production,
And
which is
yeah, and these
wonderful.
wonderful studios, that
Yeah.
state-of-the-art studios. Yes.
Yeah. So to switch topics just a little bit, because this is the Emerging Leaders Institute podcast, I want to talk a little bit about your leadership style and whatnot. You've had a pretty storied history with BronxNet. What are some of the lessons that you've learned that you feel like over the years have helped you become a better leader and have you serving where you are now? Like, what are some of those little things you've picked up over the years?
I would say, when I was working with anybody who was working with me or for me, um, to really show them as much as you can initially, and then let them fly, and then help them out, urge them to come to you if they're having trouble. But I've seen people just achieve unimaginable results, when I just let them fly, and let their ideas flow, and let that help um, be a big part of what we are and how we serve. It's really been very beneficial.
That's amazing. Have there been, and maybe you don't want to answer this because it has a little bit of connotation behind it, but what are some of those, I learned the hard way moments? Like, have there been any like struggles you've kind of faced in terms of trying to educate or, teach people and like you kind of learned maybe on the fly, like, hey, this wasn't the best way to do it or whatnot, like something that kind of made you adapt a little bit more quickly?
Um, I would say maybe in terms of, when we were, was involved with the media training, maybe realizing that everybody doesn't learn in the same way. That, the majority of the people that, took our workshops did. So again, like you said, we adapt. BronxNet is all about adapting. So, after a while, we started to offer like tutorial sessions for those who just needed to learn those skills a different way. And then, after those tutorials, they were able to really soar in what they were doing. So I would say that was, a great lesson, and being able to adapt, as he said, is wonderful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Adaptation, I think, is the greatest thing that we offer.
Mhm.
So I'm sure everyone who is probably listening to this podcast has at least some, buy-in to community media, and we're all facing a little bit of struggles, whether financially or getting our outreach out. And within ELI, I believe it was within ELI, we did something called the Rose, the Thorn, and the Bud. And that was identifying something that we were particularly proud of in the moment, something that, we see as a struggle, and then something that we're excited about that's coming up in the future, something that's like on the horizon. And, we can anticipate that that's going to be hopefully a very good thing that might bloom into a rose. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you have anything that might touch on those of like something that you're very excited about currently, something that, you see as a struggle, and then something that you see kind of on the horizon for community medias in general.
I could probably roll that all into one right now. I think it relates to the financial struggles we're facing. Presents great opportunities to come up with new ideas for potential um, support. And to that end, we are working very closely with the community media centers around New York State. Our executive director is very hands-on with it. And we have a great firm that we're working with as well. Um, and that is to put forth legislation that might help secure the future of community media in New York State. We have a bill, 9352 on the Senate side and a 10281 on the Assembly side in New York State that would ask the state to pose an excise tax on just large streaming companies, and then create a fund that would support community media as well as the state, municipalities, arts, and other entities, but for community media to support in a way that's somewhat similar to the support model that we've gotten from cable over the years, because obviously there's a lot of cord cutting that's impacting our budgets because we were used to getting X amount of
Right.
dollars from
Yeah.
the cable companies, and now that is shrinking. But obviously, we here in New York State and everywhere, where you are everywhere, community media needs to continue. So together, I love working together with the people in our state to come up with new solutions, working with the Alliance for Community Media, Mike Wasner, and all the board members and other members to come up with solutions that might work at the federal level with our elected officials, with our community partners, really. So that's both a challenge and an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I alluded to, I think nobody can look at what's happening and feel 100% comfortable with it. And I think that, the streaming bill, as I'll kind of refer to it as, or streaming bills, are certainly a very good step in the right direction. And you listed off a couple of things working with ACM, Mike Wassenauer, and everything like that. I'm wondering, if for the people who might not be at that leadership level, for, maybe employees at community media stations or for the general public, what's one way that we can help support those endeavors?
Absolutely. I know with us, and I'm sure around the country with any state that's trying to pass any legislation, it's always helpful if any um, community media producer, even any member of the public, letters are always helpful. So if you reach out to, if it's a community media center leading the initiative or whoever's leading the initiative, and find out, is there a way you can submit a letter of support for the legislation, or just a letter of support in general at any
Because
time,
those
that they
letters
can
matter.
collect and, keep in a stack, so to use, to show the potential decision makers when they need to. I know that's a big way. I know sometimes hearings are called around these and other issues, and so I think you should check and see whether there's an opportunity for you to testify about the value of community media. Um, and to continue, I think if you're a community producer, continue doing what you do, because those are success stories that we can point to when we're making our case.
Yeah, absolutely. I think examples and anecdotes just kind of showing what we do is incredibly important. And those letters might seem like a very easy thing to do, or even emails out to state representatives and whatnot. But as you alluded to, they make a huge impact. And so I know I've sent a couple, and I continue to want to do so because that is the best way that I can kind of help on the front lines. So
And in the case of New York State, we set up a portal. So most of the letter is pre-written, and there's just like one space where somebody can just personalize it and say who they are and why it's important.
there you
So,
go. You've done the work for them.
well, no, we rely on them, and we truly appreciate
Yeah.
the initiative that everybody puts forward.
Yeah. So the members from the Emerging Leaders Institute, who kind of helped set us up to do this interview today, gave me a list of questions, and one of them really stood out to me because in Westwood, we actually have a podcast that's produced by a student within the high school who interviews, school leadership. And one of the questions that she always asks at the end of the podcast is the exact same one that was in my list of questions. So I like that was kind of like a full circle moment, that even the people who are starting to become leaders within the community, and a lot of the people who are being interactive with the community on a member level, are thinking the same lines, and I really liked that. So the question was, what's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self as you were kind of starting out, whether that is your broader career, if it's BronxNet in specific, like what's one piece of advice you would have really loved to have when you were getting started?
Well, I would say, based on what I've learned just from being at BronxNet over the years, it's being at BronxNet has really um, sort of expanded what I know about the Bronx. I think, in a lot of our communities, we live wherever we live, and, we engage there, and we go to school, obviously. In a place like New York, you might then, once you become of age, head downtown to work. But I would encourage my younger self and anyone to explore the communities and in our case, the borough where we live, because there are so many wonderful things and wonderful people, and just great opportunities, a lot of opportunities that don't cost anything. I think I explored a lot of opportunities in my school, but I would encourage people to just explore arts and all sorts of wonderful activities um, in their communities, which community media does so much to highlight. I think that would be um, probably one of the great pieces of advice I would give myself.
Yeah. Any way to kind of also just get involved with the arts as well? Obviously, we're media. Obviously, those things kind of come hand in hand, but everything kind of starts at the local level. Local is kind of the lifeblood of what we do, and I think that's a beautiful sentiment. Um,
Absolutely.
so my last question for you today, is there someone currently or previously who has been involved in community media who has inspired you that you would like to see or hear from on this podcast?
I'm inspired by so many wonderful people in our field, in our community, our leaders. But I would say that I'm particularly impressed, especially right now, with our executive director, Michael Maxnavi, and just the way he has been so hands-on with trying to help not only BronxNet, but our entire field, our entire community and media field, as well as the arts community, and he really, I think, has been there, headed up to Albany to meet with our elected leaders and for the future of community media. And I think he would be a great interview.
All right, you're going to have to send him an email. We're going to get in contact so we
Yeah,
can start
okay.
setting up interviews. Audrey, thank you so much for the time today. It was really lovely to talk to you to kind of get to know a little bit. Massachusetts and New York are kind of neighbors, but it's always interesting to hear, because we're so invested on what's going on in the other communities and the other stations that are around us. But especially with the Alliance being, a more of a nationwide thing, it's always wonderful to hear different perspectives, how things are going and whatnot. So I can say I personally appreciate the time, and I hope that the viewers do as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlotte. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I love Massachusetts community media. I'm familiar with, some of the operations there, and I'm very impressed. So, I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to your public.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for listening to ELI Presents Pass the Mic. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe, rate, and follow as ELI alumni continue passing the mic to leaders who build community media and those leading it. If you're able, please consider supporting the foundation of the Alliance for Community Media. Your donations help sustain programs like the Emerging Leaders Institute, the Hometown Media Awards, and the Inclusion, Equity, and Engagement Caucus. Every contribution makes an impact. We'll see you next time when we pass the mic.